This is The Sharpest Tool, a podcast by Scorpion for home service professionals. Let's jump into the show.
Welcome back to The Sharpest Tool, where we take the sting out of marketing. My name is Josh Smith. I am your host, and today I have Jack Pham in the virtual booth. Jack is the Director of Digital Marketing for Service Champions, Plumbing, Heating, and AC. He's worked there for almost 2 years, and he also has a history of owning his own digital marketing agency. So Jack is a wealth of knowledge. I'm excited and fired up to have him on the podcast. He's got a great focus on organic reputation management versus review management, which is kind of what we're going to focus on today. So focusing on listing suppression for negative articles around the business. And I think it's a really interesting take, something different than what we typically hear about when it comes to reputation management. So Jack, welcome to The Sharpest Tool.
Hey, Josh. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. So let's kind of jump right in. For this episode, we want to focus on the importance of reviews. We know that customers look at and they trust reviews almost as much as they would a personal recommendation from a friend. So for a home service company that needs to be in a customer's home, reviews are actually more important because there's even more trust needed when you're trusting people with coming into your house, seeing your kids, your family, and your belongings inside the house. So I saw that Service Champions has over 2,000 reviews, and Google reviews specifically. I think that's probably a good place to start. How did the company build up that many reviews? Is there a certain strategy or tools that you guys use? Tell me a bit about that.
Sure. Well, it really kind of boils down to the company and who we are, really. We focus very much on the customer experience. I mean, so much so that, one of our core values is accountability. And one of our biggest mantras is our happy money promise. We go above and beyond to make sure that the company, is always focused on the customer and the customer experience, making sure they're happy or they don't pay, right? And so with that being said, after every single job, we send out a text and email to the customer using a software platform. And so in that text, we ask them to not only just rate their technician and their experience there, but also to share their experience with our company. We take them to a landing page that has all of our review sites on them, so they can use whatever review site they are most comfortable with, whether it be Google, Facebook, Yelp, etc. And then we ask them to leave a review there. But the key as well too is the follow-up as well, because customers get busy, life happens, etc. So we send out another email, text a few days later, and then a week after that. And so that's really where we capture a lot of the people who didn't get it on the first one, because they're not really thinking about that, they're thinking about other things right away. So that's the gentle nudge here and there that has made a really big impact and helped us get a lot of reviews.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the follow-up, because that's something that I was actually going to ask in follow-up with that. Is there a specific level of automation? Is that manual? How do you guys handle the follow-up? Because I know for a company as big as Service Champions, that can be a pretty challenging thing to have to follow up with as many customers as you work with. So how do you practically go about handling that piece?
Yeah, to be completely honest, it's all automated for the most part. We rely on that automation, as you mentioned, because there's a sheer volume of jobs that we complete. And so that is a key piece that we've implemented here in the last year or so that allowed us to really kind of get as many reviews as we are getting at the speed that we're getting them. That automation there and crafting the messages in those follow-ups is really important as well too, because nobody wants to be hounded. Hey, leave a review. Hey, leave a review. So it's just like, hey, by the way, we're still asking for a review, but we also kind of, give them some information as well too, like information on how to take care of their system once we've installed it, or some DIY tips and so forth. So we're actually giving some information to the client as well too, providing some value there, right, as well as asking for the review again.
Yeah, and I have a feeling I know the answer to this piece, but have you seen more success? Or I guess, where do you see the vast majority of your success in gathering those? Is it through texting? Do you get more responses via text when you do a text follow-up, or versus email versus anything else?
It's actually really surprising. We do obviously get a lot of responses via text, and so, but what we notice is that the text reviews are a lot shorter. Obviously, people are tapping on their phones, right? Yeah. They're a lot shorter, but the vast majority of our customer base skews a little older. And so, we do get a lot of email responses in that respect too. And those also tend to be longer as well too. So there's kind of that mix there. It's really interesting to see.
Yeah. There's a lot of buzzwords out there when it comes to reputation, and specifically surrounding this reputation management. A lot of people use phrases like reputation management and reviews kind of synonymously, but there's a difference between organic reputation management and review management, like we were talking about kind of in the pre-interview. Tell us a little bit about that. What's the difference, and how can a company really prioritize both?
Well, reputation management has really grown into its own kind of subset of digital marketing, right? And so reputation management now for me encompasses organic search listings, review, social media, and traditional like PR, online PR, right? Like press releases and so forth. So, organic listings is really like when everybody goes out and types in your business name and sees the first listings on the first page of Google. That usually is something like, other review sites, directories, news articles, blog articles. Reviews are pretty self-explanatory, right? Social media is a big component of that as well too. That's a missing piece from a lot of home service companies because, frankly, it's an afterthought, right? And then, traditional media or traditional PR is really kind of press releases, which a lot of small home service companies aren't really, focusing on. It's very rare.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any clear examples that you've seen of a really bad PR piece that had to get removed? And how did you go about removing it? What's a good process to engage with to remove something like that?
Well, not in the home services industry, but I did work with a client once that was in kind of the body aesthetics industry. They worked a lot with kind of liposuction and things of that nature. Well, they had a bad snafu with one of their patients, and unfortunately, the patient ended up passing away. And there was a lot of press surrounding that, and a lot of things that they would consider as negative. We had to go out there and pretty much just launch a campaign that just put out a lot of content in terms of all the positive stuff that people have experienced, focus on the customers or the patients rather, that had great experiences with this doctor and this company. Lots of videos, lots of testimonials in that respect. And essentially try to just overflood with other types of content as well, rather than just focusing on the negative.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a bit about some of the best overall marketing strategies that you typically employ for reputation management. I know we've talked about suppressing listings for negative articles. What does that mean? Practically, give us some other examples about how you go about some strong marketing strategies to handle things, not just in the listing suppression, but some of the other areas for reputation management that you engage with regularly.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so, when you're talking about, online marketing, in the past, traditional SEO has really been about trying to get your website to rank for a lot of different keywords, right? Now you've probably heard about that. If you're a business owner, you probably have been approached by a lot of companies to try to do that, get on the first page rankings and so forth, right? Well, reputation management almost is like the inverse SEO, where you're trying to get a lot of other websites to rank for a few key terms, which mainly is like your business name or some variations of your business name, misspellings and so forth, right? So, that's just a lot of content that gets put out, because that's really what Google wants to see, is a lot of good, useful content that's being put out there.
Yeah.
And if you're more advanced, you can do things like link building and backlinking to make those sites stronger. And eventually what that does is it makes those sites so strong that they start to rank for your key terms above all the other stuff that you might deem as negative. So that's, the benefit there is, number one, you're trying to push down the negative stuff. But number two is that you're just putting out lots of good content, and that's going to help customers feel more comfortable that you know what you're doing, that you know what you're talking about. So essentially, you're trying to push these things down by pushing other things up above it. And depending on what you're trying to push down, that could be very time consuming and very expensive.
Yeah, I see reputation as something that goes kind of hand in hand with this idea of brand, right? And but people think, oftentimes I think as they're getting into business, or maybe they're new to business, they look at brand as like their logo or the color scheme on their website. And you got to step back, and it's like brand is the collective feeling that your customers have about the business. And that's going to feed into the reputation, right? It marries together over that way, because if you have a strong online reputation, it's going to increase the engagement that people have with the business, because they're going to see it as something that they like, something that they want to see, they want to read about, they want to engage with. Google sees that. They build trust with that, right? And it elevates the brand equity that you have, not just with your customers, but with Google as well. And so they kind of ebb and flow together. As you increase your reputation, your brand image and equity and everything increases necessarily with that. As that increases, your reputation increases as well. So it seems like they move and ebb and flow a bit together to kind of build the trust that you need with Google to impact a lot of different areas online. Do you kind of see something similar in the work that you've done?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more than that. I mean, I talked about social media briefly, but social media has really kind of taken the reins in terms of like social proofing and reputation management that way. So when you look at, for example, us with Service Champions, we spend an inordinate amount of time creating content there, in all forms and shapes and sizes of content there, on all the different platforms, because we're trying to show the customers that it's just not another nameless company that's trying to get their money and leave. We're trying to show them that we're a human company, a peek behind the curtain, if you will, and humanizing the company. So not just for Google's search rankings and social signals and so forth, but also just to kind of breed that trust with the customer as well too. So those two go hand in hand. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. So big question, the big one, right? You've probably been asked this several times as an agency owner. Can you delete a bad review? What's the perspective on it?
That's probably the first question that ever comes out of anybody's mouth to me.
Yeah.
And the short answer is no. I mean, reviews have become very, very hard to remove over the past few years now, just because these companies have gotten so much scrutiny and criticism over how they've handled these reviews in the past. And so, especially with Google, they don't remove barely anything at all unless it's clearly fake there. And even so, those go through an extensive review process there. So there are certain cases where you can have a review removed if you can prove that, say, something was from an ex-employee, or somebody who clearly has it out for you, or violates some privacy rules, just those type of things. But as a general rule, if somebody's just upset and just going crazy on the company online, there's not really much you can do there, except for trying to drown that out with more positive reviews.
More positive reviews. Yeah, that seems to be kind of the common advice that we've seen, we've been able to give as well. I know there's some companies that they go into trying to delete bad reviews by just hounding the review company over and over and over and over again until hopefully they have some success, especially for something that, like, if the review is false too, right? Or if it's something who's not a customer and you can prove that they're not a customer. It seems like there are some windows of opportunity, though it's for a business owner, it's probably not something that you're going to be, it's probably more incumbent on your time to go build positive experiences and increase.
Yeah, absolutely. Your time is much better spent. Yeah, your time is much better spent just going out and getting more positive reviews. It's just not worth it for you to kind of go after those negative reviews. And that's one of the questions as well too, is, we've had clients come to me and ask, hey, should I just send reviews to people I know that are going to be for sure happy with the service, versus sending it to everybody and risking a negative review? And I say to them, no, not really, because if you're trying to parse that out, you're going to hinder yourself in terms of volume, and you're not going to get the experience that you want to get.
Definitely. Is there a better review platform or better set of review platforms than others for home service businesses that you found?
Well, we've primarily noticed that Google and Yelp are by far going to be the best platforms for you. And Yelp is a mixed bag. People like Yelp and people don't like Yelp, but if you're playing nice in the sandbox with them, they'll generally treat you pretty well.
You know what's interesting about Yelp? We've seen some really powerful results with Yelp advertising, and I know Yelp advertising has been a mixed bag, and for business owners who have run it on their own. And we have a great partnership with Yelp and have been able to see a lot of really strong success with it. But we've still had clients that we work with who are resistant because there's almost like this philosophical underpinning of, well, I'm not going to work with them because of how the reviews operate. They've shunned the ones that are really strong, powerful reviews of actual customers, and they've prioritized showing ones that are not as favorable. What's your perspective on that with respect to Yelp? I know we're kind of hedging a little bit into advertising as it relays into that, but have you seen like a similar sentiment from business owners that you've worked with?
Totally, 100%. I mean, you have the people who completely hate, Yelp, and you have the others who completely love Yelp. And really, it kind of comes down to your overall business practices. And I strongly feel that if you're doing things the right way in your business, like, you really have nothing to worry about. If you're going out and asking for reviews, which Yelp says don't ask for reviews, but that's really kind of impossible. Like, everybody's going to ask, hey, review me, whether it be on Yelp or on Google, which just, hey, just go out and leave a review or share your experiences with me. You're going to get that. But if you're doing that on a consistent basis, on a regular basis, and you're trying to provide the clients with the best possible service that you possibly can do, that's gonna, you're gonna get the benefit of Yelp, or any other website, really.
Yeah, what's interesting too? It's a bottoms up approach rather than that top down approach, right? It's not trying to, like, if you're having to go out and fix poor reviews, there's something your reviews aren't the problem. There's something fundamentally wrong that needs addressing in terms of the business operation. And that could be the people you're hiring, the culture you're creating, or the experiences that you're providing your customers. Maybe you don't have strong operating procedures that allow your team to be able to give repeatable experiences to your customers that they can bet on and they could take to the bank and they could go talk about to their friends. So I think it's a good window into, okay, maybe we need to step back, expose a few more things within the business itself to see where we might be able to improve. So that way we can transform that. I just want to encourage all you business owners out there. It might be an opportunity to step back and reflect on some of the other areas too. So.
Can't agree more with you. Can't agree more. I mean, we've noticed as well, just even from the first interaction with customers, especially on Yelp, when they, fill out a form to get a quote from you, be responsive, be as responsive as possible, give them as much information as you can. I know that that's hard sometimes when, you haven't seen the house or even set foot in the house, so, it's just being as responsive to the messages, and getting out there. So it just kind of starts right there all the way through to the end of the process.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jack, this has been really helpful. I think our business owners are going to get a lot from this and just where they need to focus. It's something that's so simple too. It seems like a no-brainer. Hey, provide a good experience, get great reviews, focus on that. I think the listing suppression is super powerful and important that a lot of people don't really think about. And it may not, if you're a small business owner, a small home service business owner, that type of thing may not plague you as much yet. But as you continue to grow, you start to open yourself up to more scrutiny. And that's something that you just want to step back and really make sure you have a good plan of attack for. But Jack, our listeners are always listening for advice on how to grow their home service business. So what's your best tip for building a company's reviews and reputation?
Well, it really kind of goes back to that automation again. There's lots of great platforms out there that help you with that process. But if you're just starting off and you don't have the budget for that as well too, it could be very, very simple, even as simple as, getting a QR code made and pushing to a specific review site, that you want, whether it be Google, Yelp, or whatever your choice is, and just ask for the review right there, right when you're done with the job, or ask them to share their experiences. But you have to actually just do it. That's a big thing too, is we've encountered people who, are afraid to ask for reviews, or they're shy about it, or whatever the case may be. But you just have to ask for them, and then just keep going, keep it consistent, and make sure that you're providing the best service possible. And that way, you're always building that reputation.
Awesome. Jack, it's been great talking to you. Where can people find out more about Service Champions or yourself?
Our website, servicechampions.com, is the best place to get any information about us, or you can book online as well too.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I really appreciate your time, Jack. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. For everybody listening, wherever you might be listening at, definitely hit that like button and give that subscribe button a nice little tap so you can continue to get more of this awesome content. And from all of us here at Scorpion, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Like what you just heard? Join us again to learn how you can brand and market your home service business and so much more.